Princess Jiayu noticed three things about her husband almost immediately. He listened too closely, he spoke too carefully, and he never stayed past sunset. On the day of their wedding, he stood beside her beneath silk banners, composed and distant, his voice low and steady as he spoke his vows. The air in the hall felt strangely still, as though even the smoke from the incense had forgotten how to drift. He touched her only when ritual required it, his hands warm but brief, and when the ceremony ended, he inclined his head toward her with the same measured restraint. "You must be tired," Yichen said quietly. "You should rest." Before she could answer, he turned and walked away. No escort, no hesitation, no claim. Jiayu remained where she was, watching his retreating figure until the last of the witnesses disappeared, their footsteps fading too quickly into silence, as though swallowed rather than carried away. The quiet that followed pressed in around her, not empty, but expectant, like a breath being held too long. It was, she decided, the strangest beginning to a marriage she had never wanted. She had grown up surrounded by 6 brothers who loved loudly and controlled even louder, and over time she had learned to recognize how often protection and possession wore the same face. Marriage in their world had always sounded like a softer word for surrender. So when Yichen's proposal arrived, she accepted for one reason that none of them understood. He had asked, not for obedience, not for duty, not for heirs, only this: "I have no wish to take anything from you that you are not willing to give." That single line had unsettled her more than any declaration of love could have, because it placed something unfamiliar into her hands: choice. The journey stretched longer than it should have, not because of distance, but because of her brother's constant presence. Their concern pressing in from all sides like a storm that refused to break. On the second morning, her eldest brother rode up beside her, his expression already strained. "You can still change your mind," he said. Jiayu kept her gaze forward, her posture easy in the saddle. "Can I?" she asked. He exhaled sharply, leaning closer. "You know what I mean." "I know you mean to drag me home before I've even seen the place," she replied. "You don't owe a stranger your life, because he wrote careful letters." Jiayu turned her head just enough to meet his eyes. "They weren't pretty," she said. "They were careful." "That's worse." "For whom?" "For you," he said, too quickly. Jiayu let that sit between them for a moment before answering, softer this time. He asked, "That is not enough." "It was enough for me." Her brother had no answer for that, and the silence that followed was the closest thing to acceptance she expected from him. By the time the palace came into view, cut into the mountain beneath a pale mountain range, watchful sky, Jiayu felt less like a bride and more like a question no one had finished arguing. What struck her first was not its size, but its restraint. No crowds, no spectacle, no performance of welcome. Only Yichen, waiting at the base of the steps. Not elevated, not surrounded, simply there, too still. Jiayu dismounted without assistance, brushing dust from her sleeve as she approached him. He inclined his head in greeting, his posture precise without being stiff. Though there was something in the way he held himself that made the air around him feel contained. "Princess Jiayu, Prince Yichen, you've traveled far. Far enough," she said. Something faint shifted at the corner of his mouth, not quite a smile, but something that acknowledged her answer rather than dismissed it. "If you wish to rest," he said, gesturing lightly toward the palace, "your chambers are prepared. If you would prefer to walk, I will accompany you." Jiayu blinked once, studying him. "You're asking?" "I am offering." Behind her, she felt her brothers tense, but Jiayu ignored them. "Then I'd rather walk," she said. "Otherwise they'll assume I've been locked away already." Yichen stepped aside immediately, allowing her to lead, and when she began to climb the steps, he followed half a pace behind her, never touching, never directing, matching her rhythm as though he had decided from the beginning that whatever pace she set would be the one he kept. The palace unfolded slowly, its quiet deliberate rather than empty, its spaces shaped by something older than comfort. Sound behaved strangely there. Footsteps softened too quickly, voices seemed to fall short of the walls instead of reaching them. "You built into the mountain," Jiayu said, as they passed beneath a carved archway. "The mountain was here first," Yichen replied. "We learned to negotiate with it." Jiayu let out a soft breath. That sounds unstable. It has stood longer than either of us, he said. I take that as reassurance. She glared sideways at him, and this time she did not hide her small smile. Later, when they reached the eastern wing, she slowed near the open lattice where sunlight spilled across the floor. But even there, the light felt thin, as though it did not quite belong. You remembered I prefer light, she said. You mentioned disliking dim rooms, he replied. That was one line in a letter, she said. It sounded like preference. Jiayu went quiet at that. Preference, not obligation, not expectation. Preference. It unsettled her more than anything else he had said. That night, after the ceremony, he left again. The same words, the same distance, and the same absence that followed. The palace changed after dark. Not suddenly, not dramatically, but with a quiet precision that Jiayu began to notice the longer she listened. Doors closed, gates barred, lamps dimmed instead of replenished. A silence that felt intentional, not emptiness, containment, as if something was being kept in place or kept from wandering too far. You are settling in, Yichen said the next morning, pausing at the threshold of her sitting room, as though crossing into her space required acknowledgement. Jiayu closed her book slowly, studying him. Your palace is very fond of locked doors. It is an old place. That is not an explanation. No, he said calmly. Then try again. He held her gaze for a moment before answering. Some parts are closed after dark, for safety. From whom? A pause. For what moves in the night? Jiayu tilted her head slightly. You answer as if you've told the truth, she said, stepping closer, when you've only chosen your words carefully. Precision is a kind of truth, he replied. It's also avoidance. Yes, she let out a breath, half laugh, half frustration. You're impossible. That has been said. Days passed in measured quiet, their walks becoming routine, their silences less strained. What unsettled Jiayu was not what he showed her, but what he didn't. Certain corridors, certain doors, entire sections of the palace that seemed to slip out of reach whenever she turned toward them, as though the palace itself shifted to discourage her curiosity. You've avoided this side more than once, she said one afternoon, stopping near a shadowed passage that seemed darker than it should have been. It is less interesting, Yichen replied. You could say forbidden, she said lightly. That would be an error. Then tell me the truth. He looked toward the darkness briefly, and for a moment the stillness in him felt less like composure and more like restraint. Some parts are older in temperament, he said. Jiayu stared at him. That's barely a sentence. It's a complete one, he said. She shook her head, though her curiosity sharpened. The great hall answered that curiosity. The serpent painted across the far wall seemed almost alive even in stillness, its coils vast, its gaze watchful, its presence woven into the very architecture of the palace. The longer Jiayu looked at it, the more it felt less like a painting and more like something remembering how to move. Your house favors it, Jiayu said. We have for centuries, Yichen replied. Why? He was quiet for a moment before answering. Because some houses remember their dangers honestly. Jiayu turned toward him. And yours? It tries. That night she heard it. Not wind, not settling stone. Movement, slow, heavy, deliberate. Jiayu sat upright, the sound traveling beneath her like something too large to ignore. The faint tremor reaching up through the floor as though the stone itself carried its weight. For a moment, she remained still, listening, waiting for fear to take hold. It didn't. What rose instead was sharper. Curiosity. The second night she followed it, barefoot, silent, lamp in hand. The palace felt different in darkness, its corridors stretching longer than they had in daylight, its shadows thickening in corners that should not have held so much depth. The air felt cooler, heavier, as though something unseen had settled into it. The sound led her back to the great hall. She stepped inside and looked up. At first, her mind refused it. The shape along the beams did not belong to anything she understood. Too large, too still, too wrong in a way that made recognition arrive slowly, like something forcing its way through thought rather than appearing within it. Then the lamp shook in her hand, and light caught along a curve of scaled body. Alive. The serpent shifted. The sound of it was almost nothing. Just the faintest drag of weight against stone. Too quiet for something so large. Its head lowered, and its eyes found her. Jiayu stopped breathing, It should have been terror. It should have been instinct, flight, something clean and immediate. Instead, what moved through her was colder, stranger, more disorienting. Recognition, not of what it was, of how it held itself. Still, controlled, watching, waiting, the same way Yi Chen watched when he chose not to speak. Her grip tightened around the lamp. "Go," she whispered. The word barely carried. The serpent did not move at first. Then, slowly, deliberately, it withdrew, its massive body sliding back into shadow without a sound, leaving the hall empty, and somehow not empty at all, as though its presence lingered in the air it had displaced. Jiayu stood there long after it was gone, her pulse loud in her ears, the shape of it burned into her thoughts. The next morning Yi Chen looked at her once and knew. "You seem tired," he said. Jiayu let out a soft breath. "That's remarkable observant. You say that as if it's a flaw. It depends on what you do with it." She met his gaze steadily, deciding what not to say. He did not deny it. Later in the library, Jiayu closed her book and set it aside. "You never ask anything of me," she said. "That sounds like criticism." "It might be. I assumed pressure would be unwelcome." "It would," she said. "But there's a difference between not pressing someone and never reaching for them." That stilled him. Yi Chen stepped closer, his movements slower now, more deliberate, as though even this space between them required care. "I do not want what is not freely given," he said. Jiayu rose to meet him. "Then don't take it," she said softly. "Let me give it." He didn't move. He waited, and that more than anything, undid her. So she closed the distance herself. Her hand touched his face first, then the edge of his collar, then his mouth, and each response from him came only after hers, careful, restrained, as though even now he feared crossing a line she had not drawn. The tension between them did not break. It deepened, slowly, intentionally, until it became something neither of them could step away from without choosing to. When he kissed her, it was not possession, it was permission. And when she pulled him closer, it was not surrender, it was decision. Later, lying beside him, her hand resting over his chest, Jiayu listened to the steady rhythm of his heart. So steady it almost felt unnatural, as though it refused to falter even when it should. "Are you all right?" Yi Chen asked quietly. She let out a soft laugh. "You ask that now? I can ask again later," he said. Jiayu shifted closer, her voice softer now. "I'm all right." Something in him eased. She traced the serpent crest at his collar, her fingers lingering there. "You wear your house everywhere," she murmured. "It would be strange not to." "Not if it frightened people." "Fear and reverence are close," he said. Jiayu tilted her head slightly. "Which is it for you?" Yi Chen was quiet for a moment before answering. "Inheritance." 3 days later, her brothers arrived. Her brothers arrived just after noon, when the sun sat pale above the eastern towers, and the palace looked, for a few brief hours, almost ordinary. Jiayu had been walking with Yi Chen beneath a trellis of late-blooming jasmine, the scent faint and slightly bitter in the dry air, when a sound of hooves broke sharply across the outer stone. The noise carried strangely through the courtyard, striking the walls and falling flat, instead of echoing, as though the palace absorbed it, rather than returned it. Jiayu stilled mid-step, her fingers tightening subtly against the fold of her sleeve, as she lifted her gaze toward the archway. They came hard, not as guests, as men prepared to take something back. Yi Chen stopped the moment she did, his stride halting cleanly beside her. His gaze shifted toward the entrance only briefly, before returning to her face, his expression composed, attentive in a way that suggested he was measuring her reaction more than the arrival itself. "Were you expecting visitors?" Yi Chen asked quietly. "No," Jiayu replied, her voice flatter than she intended, her eyes still fixed ahead as the rhythm of hooves slowed into a controlled, deliberate halt. A servant hurried in moments later, breath tight, bowing too quickly to be graceful. "Your Highness, Lady Jiayu's brothers have arrived," he said, the words pressing together at the edges. Yi Chen turned fully toward Jiayu, his posture still, offering space rather than stepping into it. "Would you like me to receive them with you?" he asked. Jiayu exhaled slowly, irritation flickering beneath the surface, not at the question itself, but at the steadiness of it, the way he continued to place the decision in her hands, even now, when everything in her life had always been decided for her. "They did not ride across mountain roads to be turned away," she said, turning her head slightly toward him. You may as well meet the storm. Something faint, almost dry, touched Yichen's mouth. I suspected they traveled with one, he replied. He lifted his arm in a quiet offering. Jiayu's gaze dropped to it, and for the space of a heartbeat she simply looked, not uncertain, not hesitant, but aware, always aware of the choice being placed before her. Then she set her hand lightly against his sleeve, her fingers settling there with quiet intention. Then let's not keep them waiting, she said. Together they crossed the courtyard. Though his tone suggested he did not trust the evidence, Jiayu smoothed her sleeve where his hands had been. I didn't realize you came to inspect livestock, she replied evenly. His jaw tightened. You wrote to mother. I did, Jiayu said, folding her hands neatly before her. That is generally how letters work. Behind him, her second brother turned slowly, his gaze dragging across the courtyard, the pillars, the distant guards who did not move, even as they watched. It's too quiet here, he muttered. The words did not echo. They seemed to sink into the stone and disappear. That, Jiayu said, turning her head toward him, is called discipline. Yichen stepped forward then, not enough to stand between them, only enough to be present within the space. You are welcome in my home, he said calmly. You must be tired. Tea has been prepared. Her eldest turned to him fully, the movement deliberate. Prince Yichen, he said. Yichen inclined his head slightly. I am glad you arrived before dusk, he replied. The roads are less forgiving after dark. Jiayu felt the shift immediately. The words were courteous, the meaning was not. Her third brother folded his arms, his expression tightening. Convenient advice, he said, his tone edged with quiet challenge, from a man whose palace shuts itself like a tomb at sunset. Jiayu's gaze snapped toward him. You've been here 3 breaths, she said sharply. Long enough, he replied. Yichen did not react. He turned his palms slightly, gesturing toward the low table beneath the lattice. If we are to be suspicious, he said, his tone even, we may as well be comfortable while doing so. Jiayu almost smiled. Her brothers did not. They sat. The tea between them steamed at first, then slowly began to cool, the thin curl of vapor fading into still air that carried no draft, no movement, nothing to disturb it. Jiayu noticed the pattern along Yichen's sleeve again as he lifted his cup. Not floral, not ornamental, scaled. Her eldest noticed it too. Your house favors the serpent, he said, his gaze lingering a fraction too long. Yichen rested his fingers lightly against the rim of his cup. It has for a long time, he replied. A strange choice. Most old things are, Yichen said, taking a measured sip before setting the cup down. Especially the ones that survive. Her second brother leaned forward, forearms braced against his knees. Jiayu writes that halls are barred at night, he said, that something moves in the dark. Jiayu set her cup down with a soft, deliberate click. I wrote that the palace is strange, she corrected, lifting her gaze. Not that I was in danger. You shouldn't have to know the difference, he said. Actually, Jiayu replied, her voice sharpening just enough to cut through the room. That is exactly the difference I should know. Jiayu, her eldest said, the warning low. She is correct, Yichen said. He did not raise his voice. He did not need to. Your sister came here with open eyes, Yichen continued, his gaze steady on her eldest brother. That matters. Her eldest's expression hardened. Open eyes require truth. And truth, Yichen replied, folding his hands loosely before him, rarely arrives whole. The silence deepened. Even the servants seemed to breathe more carefully. Then give us a piece, her third brother said. Yichen's gaze flicked briefly toward Jiayu, then returned. The palace is older than the kingdom around it, he said. There are paths within it that do not belong to us at night. That's a story, her second brother said. It's a warning, Yichen replied. Of what? He pressed. Yichen's fingers shifted once against the table. Of what continues, he said, whether we acknowledge it or not. The conversation ended not because it resolved, but because it could not continue without breaking. Jiayu rose first. What do you know? Her eldest demanded once they reached the courtyard, his voice low but sharpened. Enough, Jiayu replied, turning to face him. That is not an answer. It isn't for you. You wrote something moves here, he said. Yes. You wrote doors are locked. Yes. And you're not afraid? No, she said, without hesitation. That answer stopped them. Why? Her second brother asked. Jiayu's gaze drifted briefly toward the pale stone beyond them, the quiet stretching wide and undisturbed. Because men who intend harm rarely bother with gentleness, she said. Her eldest voice sharpened. Gentleness can be a mask. Yes, Jiayu replied, her eyes returning to him. That evening, she found Yi Chen in the western gallery. He stood near the lattice, one hand braced lightly against the carved frame as wind moved through the corridor in uneven breaths, stirring the lantern flames so they bent downward instead of rising. They won't let this go, Jiayu said as she approached. No, Yi Chen replied without turning. They will not. You should tell them something, she said. Something, he repeated, turning his head slightly. A truth they cannot mistake for silence. Yi Chen shifted then, turning fully to face her. Men like your brothers do not hear boundaries, he said quietly. They hear defiance. Then frighten them, Jiayu said. That would go badly, he replied. For whom? She asked. His eyes held hers. Jiayu exhaled softly. For me, she said. He did not answer. I saw it, Jiayu said after a moment. Yi Chen went still. In the great hall, she continued, her voice lower now. It didn't attack me. No, he said, almost immediately. She studied him. You knew that. I know enough. Jiayu let out a quiet breath. That answer from you is infuriating. I am aware. It watched me, she said, as if it knew me. Yi Chen's gaze flickered, something shifting beneath the calm. And yet, he said, you stayed. Yes. Why? Jiayu inhaled slowly, her voice softening. Because if I had told anyone, they would have made it simple, she said. A monster, a threat. She met his gaze, and I knew it wasn't. Yi Chen's expression softened, just barely. That was not an easy choice. No, she said, it wasn't. The light thinned, the palace shifted. Jiayu felt it now, the subtle tightening of the air, the way sound seemed to withdraw, rather than carry. If they hear it tonight, she said, they'll go after it. Yi Chen's jaw tightened slightly. Then stay in your rooms. No. Jiayu. No, she said, stepping closer without thinking, closing the space between them. You don't get to lock me away while the truth walks the halls. This is not about denying you truth. It is about keeping you safe from what follows when fear turns men into weapons. And if silence causes it instead? She shot back. A faint scrape echoed below. Yi Chen closed his eyes briefly. There are things that do not end because they are explained, he said quietly. Only because they are survived. Jiayu's breath caught, and this time, she understood enough. The hall opened wide before her, and the serpent uncoiled into the space as though the air itself had been forced to make room for it. Jiayu felt it before she fully saw it, the weight of it pressing into the stone beneath her feet, the way the lamplight trembled in her hand as shadows stretched too long across the pillars, lagging behind the movement that cast them. Her brothers spread instinctively into a line, steel rising in a single unified motion, controlled precision that made something cold settle in her chest. It did not surge forward. It did not strike. It curved instead, its long body sliding across the floor in a deliberate arc, searching for space, for escape, for a path that did not run through them. Stop, Jiayu called out, her voice sharp as she stepped forward, lifting the lamp higher, as if light alone could halt what was about to happen. No one listened. Her third brother lunged first, his blade flashing in a clean, decisive arc, meant to end the confrontation quickly. The strike landed with a sharp crack, steel skidding along scale, and jolting his arm sideways, and in the same instant the serpent reacted. Not with blind force, but with terrifying precision. Its body snapped across the floor and struck him at the waist, sending him crashing into one of the pillars, hard enough to drive the breath from his lungs. Back, her eldest shouted, stepping forward, blade raised. Don't touch it, Jiayu cried, her voice breaking as she moved again, closer now, too close. Her second brother came in from the left, slashing low, and the serpent twisted with fluid ease, turning the blow aside so the blade scraped sparks instead of flesh. It could have crushed him then. Jiayu saw it clearly in the coiled tension of its body, in the sheer weight held just barely in check. But it didn't. Instead, its tail lashed backward and struck the sword from his hand, sending the weapon skidding across the floor, into shadow. It's trying to get past you, Jiayu shouted, her breath coming faster now, urgency tearing at every word. It's not attacking you. Are you mad? Her eldest snapped without looking at her. No, she shot back, her voice shaking with fury. You are. Her youngest brother, pale and trembling, drove his spear forward with both hands, the point slipping beneath a lifted scale, and holding there for a single suspended moment that seemed to stretch far longer than it should have. The sound that followed was not a roar, not a hiss, but something deeper and more terrible. A raw, shuddering force that vibrated through the stone beneath her feet and climbed up through her body until it settled somewhere behind her ribs. The serpent convulsed, its massive form arching violently as it slammed into the pillars, sending fragments of stone and dust cascading down. One of the torches tore loose and struck the floor, flaring briefly before guttering out, and the hall dropped half into darkness. "Hold it," someone shouted. Jiayu saw everything too clearly. The sharp rise and fall of her brother's shoulders, the gleam of steel lifting and falling, the way the serpent twisted and turned, not to destroy them, but to avoid them, to redirect each strike, to create space where none existed. Even wounded, even with blood beginning to darken the stone beneath it, it chose restraint. "Stop!" Jiayu screamed, the word tearing from her as she flung her lamp aside and ran forward, both hands outstretched. Hands grabbed at her, one of her brothers trying to pull her back, but she twisted free, forcing herself forward into the space between steel and scale. "Have you lost your mind?" her eldest shouted, catching her arm hard enough to bruise. Jiayu wrenched against him, her breath ragged, her voice breaking with the force of it. "Have you?" she demanded. "Look at it. Really look." "It's a monster," he said. "No," Jiayu replied, her voice cracking open. "It's something trying very hard not to become one." That moment of hesitation, brief, fragile, was enough. Her second brother drove his blade forward, deep into the wound the spear had opened, the steel disappearing to the hilt. The serpent reared. For one terrible instant it rose above them all, its shadow swallowing what little light remained, and Jiayu felt the shift in it, the breaking point, the place where restraint could have given way entirely. Its head came down with enough force to crack the stone at her eldest brother's feet, the rush of its breath striking his face. But the jaws did not close. They did not take what they could have taken. Instead, the creature stopped there, trembling, its entire body held in a tension that seemed impossible to sustain. Slowly, impossibly, it lowered itself. The coils loosened, the immense weight of it settling against the stone in heavy, uneven stages until it lay still, its breath shuddering and fading. Silence fell so suddenly, Jiayu could hear the blood rushing in her ears. She tore free of her brother's grip and dropped to her knees beside it, her hands shaking as they hovered for only a fraction of a second before pressing down against the curve of its neck. Warm, alive, still trembling, recognition struck her not as thought, but as certainty. "Yichen," she whispered, the name breaking from her like something pulled loose. The body beneath her hand shuddered. At first the change was subtle, light threading beneath the scales and faint pale lines, like veins of moonlight spreading through dark water. The glow strengthened, not harsh, but steady, growing wherever her tears fell, each drop striking the surface and sinking in as though the creature itself was drinking them. Jiayu did not pull away. She leaned closer instead, her hands flattening against him, her tears falling freely now, her breath uneven as she whispered again, "Open your eyes, please." The serpent's body convulsed, but with something deeper, something that felt like unraveling. The scales shifted beneath her palms, softening, dissolving, the ridged texture giving way in uneven patches as the massive form collapsed inward. Bone shortened, muscle reshaped, the long, impossible body folding in on itself with a motion that felt wrong to witness and what could not be denied. Jiayu drew back only enough to avoid the weight. She leaned forward again the moment it settled. Yichen lay where the serpent had been. His robes were torn, blood spreading dark beneath him, his chest rising in a sharp, ragged inhale that broke the silence. Jiayu made a broken sound and caught his face between her hands, her fingers trembling as they framed him. "Don't you dare," she said, her voice shaking with everything she could not contain. "Don't you dare leave this unfinished." His eyes opened, slowly, unsteadily, but they opened, and they found her. For a moment, the world narrowed to the space between them. "You stayed," he murmured, his voice rough, barely more than breath. Jiayu let out a trembling exhale, her thumb brushing his cheek, smearing blood and tears together. "Of course I did," she said softly. You asked me to choose, so I did. Something in him broke open then, something unguarded and raw that she had only glimpsed before. His hand lifted, weak but certain, finding her wrist. Jiayu, he said, her name quieter now, freer. She didn't let him say more. She closed the distance. Her mouth found his with no hesitation, no restraint, everything she had held back breaking loose at once as she pressed into him. Her hands tightening in his hair, her breath unsteady against his lips, as if anchoring him there, in this shape, in this moment, in this life he had nearly slipped from. For a heartbeat he stilled beneath her. He answered. His hand rose, stronger now, sliding to her jaw, his fingers curling there as though confirming she was real, as though her warmth was the only thing he trusted. The kiss deepened, not urgent, not desperate, but inevitable, something that had been building from the moment they met, now finally allowed to take shape. When she pulled back, it was only enough to rest her forehead against his, her breath still uneven. You don't get to disappear at sunset anymore, she said softly. A faint smile touched his mouth. I suspect, he murmured, his voice low, that was never truly my choice. Then it is now, she said. He looked at her for a long moment. He nodded, and this time, there was nothing in him holding back.